I'm a millionaire living alone, what my former classmates have that I'll never have. I'm a millionaire. Let me be very clear about that from the start, because it's important for you to understand just how meaningless that statement is when I say it. I own 3 apartments, one in Manhattan, one in Miami, one in Los Angeles, each worth over $1 million. I drive a Mercedes S-Class that costs more than most people make in 2 years. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. I have investment portfolios that generate more passive income monthly than the average American family earns in a year. My net worth, at last calculation, is somewhere north of $8 million, and I live completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. Not just physically alone, though that's certainly true. I haven't had a meaningful conversation with another human being in weeks, but alone in a way that's so profound it feels like I'm the only person left on Earth, like everyone else is living in a world I can see but can't access, a world of connection and meaning and love that I somehow locked myself out of decades ago and can never get back into. 3 weeks ago, I attended my college reunion. 45th reunion, which means it's been 45 years since I graduated from NYU with a degree in finance and a plan to conquer the world. I almost didn't go. I've skipped every previous reunion, told myself I was too busy, had too much work, didn't see the point in rehashing the past with people I barely remembered. But this year something made me go, maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness, maybe some subconscious awareness that time was running out, and this might be my last chance to connect with people who knew me when I was young. Whatever the reason, I went. I flew from Miami, where I've been spending most of my time lately because the weather is better for my failing health, to New York, checked into a hotel, even though I own an apartment there because the apartment felt too empty, too full of echoes, and showed up to the reunion dinner at a restaurant near campus. Walking into that room changed something fundamental in me, broke something that can't be repaired. There were maybe 80 people there, classmates I hadn't seen in over 4 decades, all of us now in our mid to late 60s, all of us showing the wear of time, grey hair and wrinkles, and the slight stoop that comes with age. But what struck me immediately, what hit me like a physical blow, was how many of them came with someone. Spouses mostly, partners they'd been with for decades, people who held their hands and laughed at their stories and clearly, obviously loved them. And many of them had brought photos, physical photos and phones full of digital images, of children and grandchildren. The conversations around me were full of updates about families, about kids who just got into college or got married or had babies, about grandchildren's first words and first steps, about anniversary celebrations and family vacations and Sunday dinners with 3 generations around the table. I stood there in my expensive suit, worth more than most people spend on a month of clothes, holding a drink I barely tasted, and I felt like a ghost. People recognized me, came over to say hello, asked what I'd been up to. And what could I say? That I'd made a lot of money, that I owned properties in 3 cities, that my investment strategy had been very successful. I tried to engage, tried to ask about their lives, and person after person lit up telling me about their families. John, who I vaguely remembered as a decent student but nothing special, showed me pictures of his 4 children and 9 grandchildren, talked about how his eldest daughter just made him a great-grandfather, how his family gets together every Sunday for dinner at his house. Susan, who had been in my economics study group, talked about her 38-year marriage, how she and her husband just took a cruise to celebrate their anniversary, how they're planning to retire soon and travel together. Michael, who I remembered as kind of a screw-up who barely graduated, talked about his twin sons, both engineers now, and how proud he was of them. And then someone, I don't even remember who, asked me the question I had been dreading. What about you? Married? Kids? I felt my face get hot, felt that familiar shame and defensiveness rising up. No, I said, trying to sound casual, like it was a choice rather than a failure. I focused on my career, never really had time for all that. There was a moment of awkward silence the kind of silence that screams with pity and discomfort. Someone tried to change the subject. Someone else mentioned how successful I must be. But the moment had exposed me, had revealed the fundamental emptiness of my life to a room full of people who had what I didn't, who had built something real and human while I had built a portfolio. I left early, claimed I had an early flight the next morning, which was a lie. I went back to my hotel room and I couldn't sleep. So I lay there in the dark, in a king-size bed in a luxury hotel, and I felt something I had been successfully avoiding for decades, the full weight of what I had done to myself, what I had traded away, what I would never have. Those people, my former classmates, many of whom I had considered beneath me when we were in school, many of whom went into ordinary careers as teachers or mid-level managers or small business owners, many of whom live in modest houses and drive 10-year-old cars and worry about money sometimes. They are rich in ways that make my millions look like poverty. They have love. They have family. They have people who care about them not because they're paid to care, but because there are decades of history and connection, and genuine affection. They have meaning in their lives beyond bank statements and property deeds. They have something to live for beyond themselves, and I have nothing. I am 66 years old, a millionaire several times over, and I have absolutely nothing that matters. Let me tell you how I got here. Not because I expect you to feel sorry for me, I made my choices and I own them, but because maybe, just maybe, someone reading this is on the same path I was on, and maybe they'll see where it leads and choose differently before it's too late. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, the youngest of 3 kids in a family that struggled financially. My father worked in construction when there was work, and my mother cleaned houses. We weren't desperately poor, but we were never comfortable, never secure. I remember the constant stress about money, the fights between my parents about bills, the embarrassment of wearing hand-me-down clothes and bringing free lunch tickets to school. I swore from a young age that I would never live like that, would never struggle financially, would never be in a position where I had to worry about money. That determination became the organizing principle of my entire life. I was smart, good at math and economics, and I figured out early that education was my ticket out. I worked obsessively in high school, got a full scholarship to NYU, and threw myself into my studies with single-minded intensity. College was supposed to be about more than just classes, about making friends and having experiences and discovering yourself. But I saw all of that as distraction from my goal. I had come from nothing, had this one chance to build a better life, and I wasn't going to waste it on parties and socializing and romance. I'd have time for all that later, after I secured my future. That's what I told myself every time I declined an invitation, every time I chose studying over socializing, every time I pushed away a potential relationship because it would interfere with my focus. There were girls in college who showed interest. I wasn't particularly handsome, but I was smart and driven, and some women find that attractive. There was one girl in particular, Rachel, who was in several of my classes. She was beautiful, intelligent, funny, and she very clearly liked me. She asked me out multiple times. I always said no, always had an excuse, always put her off. Not because I wasn't interested. The truth is I thought about her constantly, but because I was terrified that a relationship would derail my plans. What if I fell in love and it affected my grades? What if I got distracted and lost my scholarship? What if I ended up like my parents, struggling financially with kids to feed? So I said no, over and over, until she stopped asking and eventually started dating someone else. I told myself I had made the smart choice, the strategic choice. I was wrong. I was so catastrophically wrong. I graduated with honors, got offers from several Wall Street firms, chose the one with the best starting salary. I was 22 years old, making $60,000 a year, which in 1979 was serious money, and I felt like I had won. I had escaped my working-class origins, was on my way to the wealth and security I had always dreamed of, and I was prepared to sacrifice everything else to get there. The culture on Wall Street in the late 70s and 80s was brutal, long hours and intense competition and a complete absence of work-life balance. But I thrived in it because I had no life to balance. I worked 80, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood because it was cheap, and I was never there anyway. Every dollar I didn't absolutely need to survive, I invested. I lived like a monk, ate ramen and rice and beans, wore the same cheap suits until they fell apart, had no social life, no hobbies, no interests beyond work and making money. My 20s and 30s were a blur of work and accumulation. I changed firms a few times, always for more money, always climbing higher. I learned how to play the game, how to make strategic moves, how to maximize compensation. By 35, I was making over $300,000 a year. By 40, over $500,000. I bought my first property at 38, a one-bedroom condo in Manhattan, paid cash. That felt like the ultimate validation, like I had finally made it. But even as I was celebrating that achievement, I was already focused on the next goal, the next milestone, the next acquisition. There were a few attempts at dating over those years, usually when a colleague or acquaintance tried to set me up because they couldn't understand how someone like me was still single. The dates were uniformly disasters. I didn't know how to talk about anything except work and money. I didn't know how to flirt or be charming or vulnerable. The physical aspects of intimacy were completely foreign to me, terrifying in their vulnerability and complexity. After enough failed attempts, I stopped trying. It was easier to just accept that I was alone, that relationships weren't for me, that I was better off focusing on what I was good at, which was making money. My 40s and 50s were more of the same, just with bigger numbers. I continued to climb, continued to make more money, continued to invest aggressively. I bought the apartments in Miami and Los Angeles, the luxury car, accumulated the trappings of wealth. I traveled for work, stayed in five-star hotels, ate at expensive restaurants, always alone. My life was comfortable in terms of material goods, but completely devoid of human connection. I had work acquaintances, but no real friends. I had professional contacts, but no one who actually knew me. I was successful by every conventional metric, and failing at the most basic human need for connection. I started having health problems in my late 50s. High blood pressure, pre-diabetes, chronic stress. My doctor told me I needed to make lifestyle changes, reduce stress, develop a support system. I nodded and changed nothing. What was I going to do? Suddenly learn how to make friends and form relationships at 60. I took medication for the blood pressure and the pre-diabetes, and I kept working, kept accumulating, kept living my sterile, lonely existence. I retired at 63, not because I wanted to, but because the firm was restructuring and I was ready to cash out. I had accumulated about $7 million in net worth by then, enough to live very comfortably for the rest of my life. I thought retirement would be freeing, that I'd finally have time to enjoy my wealth, to travel for pleasure rather than work, to relax. Instead, it was torture. Suddenly I had nothing to do, no structure, no purpose. Work had been my identity, my reason for existing, and without it I was nobody. I tried to fill the time with activities, with travel, with hobbies, but everything felt hollow. I was going through the motions of living without actually living. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. The loneliness became unbearable in retirement. When I was working, I could tell myself I was too busy for relationships, that I'd get to it eventually. But in retirement, I couldn't hide from the reality anymore. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. No spouse, no children, no close friends, no one who cared whether I lived or died. I tried online dating, spent money on premium services, went on dozens of first dates. They all ended badly. Women my age, women in their 60s, they've lived full lives. They've been married, had children, built families. They can smell my inexperience and my emotional unavailability from a mile away. They don't want a project, don't want to teach a 60-something man how to be in a relationship. They want partners with experience, with emotional intelligence, with the ability to connect. I don't have any of that. Yes, at 66 years old, I'm still a virgin, not just physically, though that's humiliatingly true, but emotionally. I've never experienced romantic love. I've never had someone I could be vulnerable with. I've never had sex, never held someone I cared about while they slept, never had someone hold me when I was scared or sad. I've never experienced any of the intimacy, both physical and emotional, that makes us human. I traded all of that for money, and money turns out to be a very poor substitute for human connection. My health has continued to decline. The pre-diabetes became full diabetes. My blood pressure, despite medication, is dangerously high. I have heart disease, arthritis, the beginnings of kidney problems. My body is falling apart, which I suppose is what happens when you spend decades neglecting it, working too much, eating poorly, never exercising, living under constant stress. My doctors have made it clear that I need to prepare for the reality that I won't be able to live independently much longer. I'm going to need care, regular medical attention, help with daily activities eventually. So I've been researching assisted living facilities, the luxury kind where people with money go to die comfortably. I've visited several, toured the grounds, seen the private apartments and the common areas and the medical facilities. They're nice as such places can be. The one I'm leaning toward costs $12,000 a month, which I can easily afford. It has gourmet dining, activities, a full medical staff, everything money can buy except what I actually need, which is people who care about me. I'll be surrounded by staff who are professional and kind, but who are there because it's their job, not because they love me. I'll be one of dozens of residents, all of us wealthy enough to afford this place, all of us alone in the ways that matter. That reunion 3 weeks ago, seeing my former classmates with their spouses and their photos of grandchildren, hearing about their Sunday family dinners and their anniversary celebrations and their lives full of love and connection, it broke something in me that was already cracked. I've spent the last 3 weeks unable to shake the comparison, unable to stop thinking about what they have that I'll never have. John, with his 4 kids and 9 grandkids and his Sunday dinners, he probably makes $50,000 a year managing a hardware store. Susan, with her 38-year marriage and her plans to travel with her husband, she was a teacher her whole career, probably never made more than $60,000. Michael, the supposed screw-up with his twin sons he's so proud of, he runs a small plumbing business, lives in a modest house in Jersey. By every metric I was taught to value, I'm more successful than all of them. I have more money, more property, more assets. But by every metric that actually matters, they're infinitely richer than me. They have love. That's the simple, devastating truth. They have people who love them, who they love back, who are woven into their daily lives in 1,000 small ways. They wake up next to someone who cares about them. They get phone calls from children checking in. They have grandchildren who run to hug them. They have decades of shared memories, of inside jokes, of weathering life's storms together. They have meaning and purpose beyond themselves. They have something to live for, someone to live for. And when they die, they'll die surrounded by people who love them, who will mourn them, who will remember them, who will feel the hole their absence leaves in the world. And what do I have? I have money. I have properties and investments, and a luxury car. I have things that will be sold or donated after I die. I have a bank account that will go to some charity I'll pick, essentially at random, because I have no one to leave it to. When I die, which based on my health could be sooner rather than later, I'll die alone in that assisted living facility, maybe with a paid caregiver holding my hand because it's their job, maybe not even that. No one will mourn me. No one will feel like the world is less without me in it. I'll be forgotten within days, maybe hours. The facility will clean out my room, will fill it with another lonely old person with money but no family. And that will be the sum total of my life. I made money, and then I died alone. The realization of what I've done, what I've traded away, what I'll never have, it's crushing me. I lie awake at night in my expensive apartment, in my expensive bed, and I feel a despair so profound it's almost like drowning. I can't breathe under the weight of it, the understanding that I wasted my entire life chasing something worthless while letting everything valuable slip through my fingers. I spent 45 years deliberately avoiding relationships because I thought they would interfere with my goal of becoming rich. I told myself there would be time for love and family later, after I achieved financial security. But there is no later. I'm 66 years old. I can't have children now. I can't build decades of history with someone now. I can't go back and make different choices. I can't undo what I've done. And the cruelest part, the thing that makes this almost unbearable, is that I knew. On some level, I always knew. Every time I said no to a date, every time I chose work over connection, every time I saw happy couples or families and felt that brief pang of longing before I buried it, I knew what I was sacrificing. But I told myself it would be worth it, that financial security was more important than emotional fulfillment, that I could always catch up on the relationship stuff later. I was wrong. I was so fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. Money doesn't buy happiness. That's such a cliché that people don't even really believe it anymore. We assume it's something poor people say to make themselves feel better. But it's true. More than true. It's the central truth of human existence that I somehow missed. Money provides comfort and security and freedom from certain kinds of worry, and those things are valuable, but they don't provide meaning or connection or love. $1 million in the bank doesn't keep you warm at night. A luxury car doesn't call to check on you. A portfolio of properties doesn't care if you live or die. The things that actually make life worth living, the things that give existence meaning and joy, they can't be bought. They have to be built over time through vulnerability and risk and genuine human connection. And I never built any of that. I was so busy building wealth that I forgot to build a life. My former classmates, the ones I saw at that reunion, the ones I used to consider less successful than me, they figured out something I missed. They understood that success isn't measured in dollars, but in connections, that a modest house full of family is worth more than an empty mansion, that a long marriage, with all its ups and downs, is worth more than any investment return, that children and grandchildren, with all the worry and expense they bring, provide a richness that money never can. They chose people over profit, and they ended up with everything that matters. I chose profit over people, and I ended up with nothing. If I could go back, if I could talk to my 22-year-old self standing on the edge of his career, making those early choices that would shape everything that followed, what would I say? I'd tell him that he's right to work hard, right to want financial security, right to escape the poverty he grew up in. But I'd tell him that money is a means to an end, not an end in itself, that the goal isn't to accumulate as much as possible, but to have enough to live comfortably while building a life that's actually worth living. That saying yes to Rachel when she asked him out wouldn't derail his career. It might have made him happier and more balanced, and actually more successful in the long run. That working 80 hours a week isn't sustainable, and that the extra money he's making isn't worth the life he's sacrificing to earn it. That relationships aren't distractions from life, they're the point of life. That vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the only way to actually connect with another human being. That he needs to invest in people with the same intensity he invests in his portfolio, because at the end of his life the people will matter, and the portfolio won't. But I can't go back. I can't warn my younger self. I can't make different choices. All I can do is sit here at 66, in my expensive apartment, living my expensive, hollow life, and regret, and warn others. That's why I'm writing this, why I'm laying bare the pathetic reality of my existence. Maybe someone out there is on the same path I was on, sacrificing everything for career and money, telling themselves they'll get to the relationship stuff later. Maybe they'll read this and reconsider. Maybe they'll say yes to that date. Maybe they'll leave work on time to have dinner with someone they care about. Maybe they'll choose people over profit before it's too late. Because here's what I learned too late. It becomes too late faster than you think. You're 25, then you blink and you're 40, then you blink again and you're 65, and suddenly there's no time left to build what you should have been building all along. The opportunity to have children closes. The chance to build decades of history with someone disappears. The possibility of creating a family, of forming deep friendships, of actually living instead of just working, it all evaporates while you're busy chasing the next promotion or the next dollar. And then you're old and sick and alone, staring down the barrel of death in an assisted living facility, surrounded by expensive things, but not a single person who loves you. And you realize with horror that you wasted your one precious life accumulating stuff that doesn't matter while neglecting everything that does. I'm a millionaire and I live alone, And my former classmates with their modest homes and their modest incomes have something I'll never have. They have love. They have family. They have meaning. They have each other. They're rich in all the ways that actually matter, and I'm desperately, devastatingly poor. I spent my entire life making the wrong choice, over and over and over again, and now I have to live with the consequences. Or more accurately, I have to die with them. Alone in that facility, my hand held by a stranger being paid to pretend to care, mourned by no one, remembered by no one, leaving nothing behind but a bank account that will be distributed to charities that will send thank you letters no one will read. Don't make my mistakes. Please, for the love of God, don't make my mistakes. Work hard, yes. Build financial security, yes. But not at the cost of your humanity. Not at the cost of love and family and connection. Not at the cost of actually living your life. Choose people. Risk your heart. Be vulnerable. Build relationships. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video you'll find more stories like this one. Have the courage to prioritize connection over career, love over money, life over work. Because at the end, and the end comes so much faster than you think, the people are all that matters. Everything else, every dollar, every achievement, every material possession, it's all just garbage compared to being loved and having people to love. I know that now. I know it with a clarity that's agonizing. But it's too late for me. Don't let it be too late for you.